we're going to be discussing the life and passion of a wildlife control legend, Eric Critter McCool, on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Happy Monday to you all. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every week discussing all things pest. And I have a very, very, very exciting podcast to share with you all. I have on the podcast Eric Critter McCool. And he was so gracious enough to give me an interview. A very busy man, but has accomplished an extraordinary amount of success in what he considers success in his very, very young life, which he's still a very young person like me in mid-40s. So it's just really, really exciting podcast we're going to be bringing to you. And I wanted to acknowledge the people that listen every week to this podcast, give us likes, shares, and just feedback on the podcast. And this week is Josh Refsbuck. Now, it is pronounced R-Z-A-P-K, and I hope I didn't butcher that, but I probably did, so forgive me for that. But thank you for listening, to liking the podcast on Facebook and following us. I really do appreciate it. And I got Williston Park Exterminators on Twitter who are liking us and following us on Twitter. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you guys sharing. It's been a very, very busy week on Facebook and Twitter for people liking us and following the podcast, and just an extraordinary amount of growth in the podcast in this last week. So greatly do appreciate all of you listeners. If you ever want to join us, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any social media site you're using, we're on. Also, Facebook, on our website at pestgeekpodcast.com. You can get the latest information there. And if you want to call the podcast, have a question, you can all submit it through email at questions@pestgeekpodcast.com, or you can call the number line at 707-395-7378 and leave a recorded voicemail 24/7 from anywhere, and we do greatly appreciate that. If you are looking for a powerful flashlight that is made very, very high quality, there's a company called Streamlight. I was just at Bass Pro Shops over the weekend, and I was walking through it. And anytime I walk through that store, forget it. My wife lost me. I was in the mall with my son and with her, and I just decided to walk in there. And I went over to the light. I said, let me see what kind of lights they have, because I'm always looking for really good lights. I got a headlamp now, and I'm looking for something. It doesn't last that long. The batteries get eaten up pretty quick. And I'm usually using it about an hour to an hour and a half at a time, and eats a lot of battery. So let me see what's available. And man, I came across some lights that I was just drooling. I mean, we're talking 700 lumens. These guys make lights all the way up to 2,200 lumens. You can put these on a high power rifle, and they make an extraordinary amount of lights that are just awesome. And check them out, streamlight.com. I got a link to on the website. They got an English US website also available, and they've got some really nice lights there. I'm looking to get a side one, a flashlight, which is a really powerful one, and then to another head one that's more concentrated. This one gives me a flood, an open area. I want something a little bit more concentrated when I'm underneath cabinets or underneath in a hole somewhere. I can get a good light, and I was really, really impressed with these lights. They're pricey, I got to tell you. They start somewhere in the $60 range all the way up to a couple $100. But very well made, very high quality stuff. So check those out. And also on the SEO, guys, get your profile picture on there. There's nothing worse than getting somebody who is on LinkedIn, who sends you a request and has no profile and no picture. makes you wonder why they're contacting you if they don't want to be seen. So get your profile right, get it updated, get a good picture on there, at least a good picture of you and one with the company or logo, whatever you're representing. But, update your profiles and get good pictures. I don't accept anybody on LinkedIn that doesn't have a profile filled out and doesn't have a picture. I won't put them in my group. So do that. It's vitally important you get that done. And in the book of the week, I love this book. It's called Delivering Happiness, by Tony Hirsch, the founder of Zappos. And, this is a company that was just acquired a couple years back by Amazon, for a couple $100 million, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And he writes a book, A Path to Profits, Passion, and Purpose. Tony Hirsch, and great book. It really, really, really helped me a lot in confirming a lot of what I knew and I understood, and helping me with my mission and vision for my company and where we really wanted to go. Not just be a Me Too company out there that is competing with everybody, but really, really stand out and provide superb customer service and enjoy what we do. And it's a great book. Check it out. It's called Delivering Happiness, A Path to Profits, Passion, and Purpose by Tony Hirsch. On the event side, there's a bunch of news here. There's a couple of Pest World events going on around the world, and I wanted to share those with you. One of them, August 27th through the 29th of 2016, is Pest World East. This is going to be at the Grand Hyatt Hotel in North Goa, India. So if you're listening out there in the Pacific or in India, in that area, there's a big conference going on that you might want to get to if you're in the pest control business there. And I don't know exactly where Goa is, but you can find out. And I'm going to give you a link to the events and the address and location and everything here. And also September the 5th through the 7th, the Euro-Asian East Pest Management Conference in Moscow, Russia, and the Russian Federation is going to be held there. And the September the 14th through the 27th let's see here, this is going to be at SeaWorld, Gold Coast in Australia. There is the FAO-PMA conference going on there. So lots of conference going on. And then the big one here in the U.S. is going to be Pest World over in Washington State at Sheraton Seattle Hotel and the Washington Convention Center. So there you got a lot of events going on in September and October. This one is in October. Pest World is in October 18 to the 21. We got to thank our friends at pestcontrolnews.com for putting this information out. Check it out and get a link there to where this event is going on. And then now, guys, without further ado, I want to bring on the legend, Eric Critter McCool. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, I've heard you on the other pest control podcast, and with Steve and Brian. I love those guys. I love the show. And I heard you there once, and I said, man, this guy's doing some really neat things. And then I started seeing what you were posting on Facebook and things like that. And I said, what you've accomplished, to me, not in the volume, but more in the context of what you've accomplished, in your life and what you're writing about and what you're doing, is really, really was inspirational for me, because a lot of what I do isn't about money. It's not whether I have $100 million company. It's about what I'm accomplishing and what I'm contributing to society and what brings purpose to my life. And I think that I can see in the things that you have done that there's a lot of purpose. And I thought, man, if I could bring him on and you can talk about all the good and the bad, about what you've gone through in business and how you've made it here, then I think that would be greatly inspirational to other people. You just, wrote about how you are debt-free. Your business is debt-free. Your finances are debt-free. A lot of people will never accomplish that in their life. And I think how you did that and to tell people I think it's vital. That's, I think, more important than whether you build a $100 million company. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your background. Tell us where you come from, and let the audience get to know you.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on the podcast. One thing that has kind of let me, do this podcast is that inspires me personally myself is, when you're listening to podcasts and you're listening to different things, everybody concentrate on the business side of it, and a lot of people don't get personal. But on that aspect is we're all human. So there is a personal sacrifice, a personal struggle, a personal victory each and every day for each and every one of us. And people don't realize the struggle, that is behind the successful businessman. So I'm very willing and open to tell you how I got started in the struggles and all that. So I greatly appreciate your podcast for that reason.
No, thank you. Thank you for being on. Tell me, because I read you posted this little flyer, and those are the things that I just find so neat. Your first flyer, like when you went into business, and I think you were somewhere like 16. How did you get involved in pest control? In where did you come from?
Yeah, I started I actually grew up in a housing project in a very rough neighborhood. I started out very poor. My mom was, of course, on food stamps. We went to the food bank on a regular basis. Most of the time we didn't have Christmas. We had hand-me-down clothes. There was a large family of us. So very, very struggling. So 12 years old is actually where it started, kind of in the wildlife control industry, if you want to say. When I was 12 years old, the housing project was having a skunk issue. So nobody back then, this was in the mid-'80s, nobody was doing wildlife control in my area. So I, at 12 years old, I was a country boy, and I said, man, I love catching snakes and catching animals and all that. So, that's kind of how I started. And I started catching, hand catching skunks. I would actually go around with a pillowcase and catching skunks. Because one thing I realized when I was watching these animals is skunks are very slow and kind of dumb animals, if you want to say, or at least I thought at that time they were. So after the first skunk sprayed, it didn't really matter how many other times you got sprayed. So I borrowed a pair of gloves and I went around and started hand catching animals. And for actually from the age of 12 to the age of 16, that's what I did, is hand caught all my creatures. That's all I knew.
Wow.
In the wildlife control industry, a lot of them have fur taker, trapping backgrounds and etc. I never even, they don't have a trap in the project. So, I didn't know what trapping was. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I actually hand caught, these creatures, for ice cream sandwiches.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even really care about money at that time. I was just playing basketball and going to school and, hanging out. So I thought, man, free ice cream for a 12-year-old, that's fantastic. So I did that until I was the age of 14. So 12 to 13 to 14, I did that for ice cream sandwiches. I hand caught animals around the neighborhood and for this housing project. And so when I turned 14, I had a family friend that had squirrels, red squirrels in the wall, and I couldn't find nobody to remove them. So I actually smashed the wall open, hand caught the red squirrels, relocated them.
So you didn't get bit by these guys? Or I would be petrified.
Pressure bit, through the gloves and stuff. So, I've been bit many times, but most of my bites was in my early part of career doing that. So this guy came home and he actually gave me $20 for removing the red squirrels. And I said, wow, $20. Here I am living in the projects, $20 in free ice cream. I was like the king kid. Everybody wanted to hang out with me or at least eat my ice cream and then go home, So that's how it started. So when I turned 16, 16 was a big change around for me. I was hand catching skunks, and then I would put them down, and people didn't like that. And I was actually cited for cruelty to animals.
Oh.
I was 15 or 16 years old when that happened. So when I got cited, they said I was at the age that I should have known better, because back then I wasn't old enough to be licensed in the state of Pennsylvania for wildlife control because I was still a young teenager, but I was old enough to be charged for cruelty to animals.
Wow.
So when that happened, I said, okay, if I'm going to continue this, I need to specialize in relocation. So I actually, at the age of 16, I quit high school, got my GED, and started a company. And how I started the company, actually, a lot of people don't know this, is I drew up a business plan, what I thought was a business plan. I took it to a bank that my mom was banking at, and I said, I need a business loan for $10,000 to catch animals for a living. They just laughed at me. They didn't even take me serious. So my next avenue is, nobody in my family had money, but I figure at least everybody had 50 or 100 bucks or so. So I sat some family members down and I said, okay, here's the plan. I want to catch animals for a living. I need money. Of course, everybody just kind of laughed at me and said, oh, he's just a kid. He don't know, he just quit high school and all that. We're not going to help him out. So what I did, I actually mowed some grass, bought my first box trap. I didn't even know how to work. Bought my first box trap. I have a heart trap for, I don't know, it was $20 or something back then.
Uh-huh.
And then I started trapping, and I took that money and bought my first business license. And so I technically started the company with $75.
Wow.
With a box trap and a permit.
Jeez. So the crowdfunding didn't work. The banking institutions didn't nobody believed in you at 16 that you could do something like this.
Right. I mean, you're talking almost 30 years ago, and
right.
Even people in the pest control industry. I mean, who knew of wildlife control as an industry 30 years ago?
Right.
Not too many.
So
and I live in rural Pennsylvania, so it was tough.
Yeah. Now talk about vision, and then being an entrepreneur, and nobody's doing what you're doing, and you're 16 years old. And you already have a vision of something. You say, gee, I can make money at this when nobody, and this is how a lot of dreams start for people, because I know for me, it was like that a couple of times, and, I was young too, and I wanted to do things, and the vision, there's I'm going to post it on there. Gandhi had an old, saying that first they scoff you, then they laugh at you. Then they contend with you, and then they argue with you because, you actually got done what you said you were going to do. It's just amazing. So you start out, you're about 16, you get into business, you get a license, and you get going. And what happens from there? Okay.
Well, the struggle continues. So now I just quit high school. I'm making a little bit of money, but had no clue what to do with it or anything like that. I didn't get my driver's license until I was 19 years old.
Wow.
So throw this in the mix. I was 16 years old. I quit high school, and I had a business, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I actually had bought a car, and I bought a used kind of junk car off this guy. I put a little bit of money in it, and I actually had to pay friends and family to drive me to the job sites because I had no driver's license.
Wow.
So here I am I would get a phone call in the town. I would call somebody up and say, can you drive me? They would actually drive me to my job site in my own vehicle, drop me off, and then I would actually have to ask the customer to use their phone because there wasn't cell phones at that time, or I'd have to walk a few blocks down the street, call them on a payphone, and have them return to pick me up from the job sites. So how much of a struggle is that, and how much of a that kind of looks odd that you're showing up to a job site and somebody's dropping you off and picking you up.
Right.
And so they would actually drive around in my vehicle, cruising around for the day, using my gas and stuff up. But that's something I had to do, and so that's what I did until I was able to get my driver's license.
And what was the legal age to drive at that time in Pennsylvania?
It was actually 16. In the meantime, between me of about 14 to 16, I was getting in a little bit of juvenile trouble there. I was getting picked up for different minor things, and I wasn't able to drive until a later age.
Gotcha.
So at that time, I wasn't able to drive until I was 19. So at the age of 19, here I am. I got a company. I have a couple kids at that age by then. Everything's kind of starting to fall in place, you think,
Right.
So the struggle was pretty hard. One of the biggest struggles, believe it or not, from the business aspect of it was, one is getting your name out there and convincing people to pay you to do it, and paperwork. I used to, as you mentioned about that flyer that I posted there, all my flyers and everything that I did was cut and pasted. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a typewriter. So before I quit school, if I was in the library typing something up, or I would actually take letters for somebody else's flyer and cut the letters out and spell out. I almost joke like it's a copycat serial killer letter or something, because I would actually cut out each letter or each word and make my own flyers, and then I would take it to the library and Xerox copy it and try to make it and use a lot of whiteout. So the struggle was very real at that time.
Right. And so you mentioned you were already married by the time you were 19. You had kids already, and
actually, I had kids. I wasn't married at that time. Actually, I've never been married up to this point so far. I've never been married, but I had a couple kids. I was actually still living in the projects at that time. That's kind of all I knew. They actually had an outdoor shed that was attached to the apartment, so you can have storage. So here I am working for ice cream sandwiches for this housing project that I actually live in now.
Right.
Okay. So when management left, I would open the door up, because I used to keep flying squirrels and raccoons and ducks and everything in this little shed. And so, my place was kind of the petting zoo. All the kids and everybody would come around and check out all the animals that I caught, but I wasn't allowed to have them in there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And that housing project actually became one of my first commercial accounts, and I kept them for probably 20 years. I kept them.
Wow. So you're how did you go from getting out of the projects? Because I never grew up in the projects, but I did grow up in public housing.
Okay.
And I understand what that's like. How did you go from getting out of there and moving And what was that whole like as far as you moving up or moving out and getting out of that?
Well, I think that was one of the tough things because when here I am doing this, and of course the projects are public housing, even they go by your income. So
right.
I'm starting to make a little bit of money. What I did is each year I added a new animal, so I had a whole year to concentrate on learning that species. I didn't want to overwhelm myself on everything. So like skunks, I did skunks for a year. The next year I added squirrels. The following year I added raccoons and then groundhogs. So I gave myself a year to learn each animal. So here I am starting to make a little bit of money. I had a couple kids. I was with my girlfriend at that time, and she wanted to apply for welfare, and I was very reluctant to do that. So I said, okay, you and the kids apply for welfare if you choose to, but I don't want to be on welfare. And so that was right before I was 18 there.
Mm-hmm.
So in that meantime, I didn't want to, I think when you get, this is going to be a touchy thing, but if you get free money or you get things handed to you, you don't appreciate it as much, and you don't work for it. So I didn't want to. I felt if I got public assistance or help, and I was already making money, I don't think I would have been. I think I'd still be there to this day, Frank.
Right.
So it really pushed me to grow. So we're living pretty comfortable there, and but the business was starting growing, and I started seeing a vision there. So we lived in the projects with the company and my kids for, I guess it was probably three years there. So I have about 14 years living in the projects and housing there. So we decided to go ahead and move out of there and into a apartment down in the downtown there, so I could get some more exposure.
Right.
So that was a big, scary step there. And so what happened is, my girlfriend would work at the grocery store all the time. I would be, having my kids while she's at work. And so I would actually take my kids to work. I got my driver's license at this point in time now. So I'm driving them and taking my kids to all the job sites with me.
Wow. Now, through this time, you didn't have a father. You didn't have anybody like a mentor, anybody how are you getting this? You're 18 years old. You've gotten this, life. And how are you, who's helping through this whole process? Who's mentoring you? What's going on?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. I was somewhat of a Christian there. Thank my mom for having a lot of kids. She had a few kids of us, so she couldn't handle us all the time. So she actually sent me to church and to Bible camp for a free babysitter. She thought, well, if I can send him to church and they feed him and they keep him for the day, what a great thing.
Right.
So that was a big inspiring thing for me there. Of course, I have a birth father. I never knew him. I got adopted after one of her husbands adopted me. They got divorced. He kind of abandoned me there. So there's been a few,
wow.
You want to say, fellows in my life that has abandoned me a few times.
Right.
So I never did have a father figure in the picture at all. So growing up, I mean, just watching Animal Planet, National Geographic and stuff, and there's a guy out in Ohio called the Friendly Trapper, and his name's John Bailey, I believe. He has passed away. I seen a commercial of his, and he was making money and had his own business trapping use of wildlife. And I said, wow. I said, this is cool. I said, there is actually, money to be made here. So I'm living downtown. I'm trying to get exposure. I'm trying to get and I live in a very rural area. So with anything, you know, you're going to shoot them, you're going to poison them yourself, or you're going to let it be. You know, groundhog's not a problem in your backyard. So it was a real struggle to convince people to pay you, you know. So at that point in time, you know, I don't know nothing about business. I don't know anything. So I went from being a trapper to a businessman. That's when it really transpired there. I've been catching animals from 18 to 19 to 20. So now I went from a trapper and hand catching animals to a businessman. And so again, I didn't have anybody to really inspire me. I met a veterinarian. She was a mentor as in getting my GED. We went to the library every night. She helped me study, and I got my GED. Now, did a GED help me in my life? I can't give too much credit to it, but just that accomplishment made me feel a lot better.
Right.
You know, so just moving forward and watching TV and making goals. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I love setting goals. If it's a little goal personally or a little goal in a business, when you set goals, I really think you accomplish that goal. It's fantastic for me. It's a very great feeling, Frank. I don't dream too big. I think most people's dreams are too big and out of reach. And I think if you make dreams and you set goals, they're more reachable than a dream. So my goals have actually turned into my dream. You know, it's the dream that I never really had.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me just interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead.
Because you just said something that is so profound that most people don't grasp in their lifetime. And I talk to so many people that they talk about one day they're going to do this, one day they're going to do that. They have a lot of dreams and they have a lot of things they wish upon, but they never stop to set a goal and say, this is how I'm going to do it. And for that reason, they never get it done. And those wishes and dreams die with them. There's a lot of people in the pest control business who say, one day I'm going to start my own pest control business. One day I'm going to do this. And they're in a rut. Expound a little bit more on that, please, because I think that is very profound. How did you decide in not having a college degree, not having a formal business education, to set goals? How did you do that?
Well, I think the school thing, I think one thing that people avoid about setting a goal is writing that plan, how you're going to get there. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I kind of, I have set down a plan sometimes for my goals, but I say, hey, I want that new tool, or I want to expand to this city, or whatever the goal may be. You don't have to sit down and write a full business plan or, financial statement to get to a goal. You just gotta, work towards getting there. I mean, momentum and determination is probably the most important thing there is. Mm-hmm. Don't get discouraged. Like from the bee aspect. I'm one of the world's foremost leading bee extraction experts now. Mm-hmm. I seen a thing on TV about bees, and I honestly never thought I wanted to be or am a bee expert or where I'm at now. It was just something I wanted to start doing bees, and I started performing services, and I think as long as you know what you want, Frank, and you push towards it, you don't have to write that big business plan or the big financial statement against that goal. Just, work towards it. Them little things, some days I get a very little something very, very small accomplish, but that's a piece of the puzzle. And
Right.
then the next day, by 11 o'clock, I have accomplished more than most people accomplish in a week.
Right.
You know, so you get a bigger piece. So it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
Most definitely not. Now, I've been in business for almost 27 years now, and a lot of struggles. And even when you become successful, which is a very harsh, wide description. What is successful? You know, is it money? Is it happiness? Is it whatever? You know, I've been successful for a long time, but my successful meeting might be different from yours or another technician there. I've only been successful for probably the last 10 years, but I've been happy my entire career. You know, I love
Right.
getting up and going to work and accomplishing goals and stuff. So, you got to figure out from the technician side or the home or the business owner, what do you want out of life? You know, I make my own schedule. I love doing speaking engagements. You know, I'm not out there. My overhead, as you mentioned, I'm debt free. I don't have a mortgage payment. I don't have a vehicle payment, but I don't have $100,000 in the bank either.
Right.
You know, but, you know, if I want to take a day off what I'm saying is I'm not struggling to get up and make that $5,000 a day that these people are needing to pay their bills.
Right.
There's so many, I do a lot of consulting and I see these companies, their overhead is just unreal, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, why do you want that stress and that, you know, and issues? I actually, you know, growing up, running the business, I said, man, I want the biggest wildlife control company there is. Well, at one time I ran one of the largest wildlife control companies in the state of Pennsylvania. I had 19 guys. That is not where I wanted to be. I can tell you that was one of the most stressful, times of my life. I downsized. I pretty much work for myself now. I have a company in South Carolina. I have a company here. They're both wildlife control. I have the International Bee Extraction Group and Critter McCool training group, and I make more money now than I ever have. I have less stress. If I want to wake up tomorrow and not work, I don't have to. You know, do I need the money? Yes. But do I have that overhead that you have to work? No, I don't, you know.
Right.
And so, excuse me, as you mentioned, I've never had a credit card in my life. I think that's a big part of being successful. I did not go out and, excuse me, let me clear my throat.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I did not go out and purchase a new truck and a new trailer and so forth and go into big debt trying to start a business. I grew the business as in if I needed something, I took that deposit that I needed for that job and I purchased that item, you know. I didn't put it on a charge card to get free points or free gas, and I still don't. And I think that's a great big thing of my success.
Yeah, it is, you know, one of those things where for the longest time I didn't either. We've got a little bit of debt now, but it's manageable. One of my biggest things is, you know, you're a debt, you're a slave to the lender. And, I don't want to be a slave to anybody. And, that's
when you go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell me.
No, I think that's an important part to put out, like you said, a slave, because virtually that's what you become. You know, you become a slave. You have to go to work. You're not going to enjoy it much. And I love what I do. I'm very dedicated to what I do. And I love people recognizing me, but I love educating and sharing my wealth of knowledge and experience too. And I think when you become a slave, then it becomes a factory job, if you want to say.
Right.
You know, you work that 9 to 5, or, you know, as we know, is we choose not to be self-employed. we choose to be self-employed because we want to work 100 hours instead of the normal 40 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife tells me sometimes we're in the kitchen, says, you ever think about throwing in the towel and just quitting and going to work for somebody? And I said, yeah. And then I think about punching a time card, dealing with the bureaucracy and, all the stuff that goes on in a company. And then I just snap myself out of it and says, I'd rather work 80 hours a week on my terms.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing is, once you become successful in business and any type of business there's still going to be struggle. Yeah. As we know, there is people that's living in $1 million houses, living paycheck to paycheck. Right. Yeah. Credit's strung out, the bank accounts are low. I mean, just because you have lots of stuff doesn't mean you're still managing your money correctly. Right. You're still a slave, Right. So, no matter where you go in life, if you're successful or if you're living in the projects or whatever, life is going to have struggles. Right. And I think when the burden gets too heavy, that's when people throw in the towel, Right. And I have struggle, almost every day. There's something that, if it's minor or big. I did a big business deal the other day, and I lost drastically. Am I down about it? A little bit, but I'm going to overcome it and keep moving forward there.
So when you moved out of, you mentioned that you went down south. You moved out of Pennsylvania. You obviously made it out of the projects. What made you move down south? I mean, what did you go do there?
Well, the last probably 6 or 8 years, I'm at the point in my career I'm doing a lot of seminars, speaking engagements, and my name's getting out there. Back in 2000 was my first Southern job. I went down to Florida to do bee work. Okay. My first 2000 is when I really started performing bee extraction. So, 2000, I started doing a lot of, I guess that's almost 16 years now. So, I'm starting to do a lot of the bee work. Okay. And so, I'm doing a lot of work in Savannah, Georgia. I started doing some work in Charleston. Okay. And I said, okay, here I am in Pennsylvania. I've had the company here for 25 years. I got the area pretty much, if you want to say conceitedly, I have the area locked down. I have basically no competition, what I thought was competition. And, I'm living a good life, but I'm relaxed. My business aspects, my brain, everything's lax. I'm kind of comfortable. So moving down south, I debated about it for about 14 years, Frank, about really moving. I kept saying, I'm moving south. So I had no reason to move south. My kids are almost all about to graduate high school. I'm living very comfortable in Pennsylvania. So one day I woke up and I said, I'm moving south. It's very harsh here in the winter. So, I said, I'm going to move to Savannah, Georgia. So I started going down to Savannah more, and I stayed overnight in Charleston. And if you've ever been to Charleston, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it's actually documented as that. They get awards all the time. So I woke up one day and I said, I'm moving to Charleston, South Carolina. And so that's what I did. Within 3 weeks, I moved my family, my company, and everything to Charleston. So I thought at that time I did enough research down there. So I'm down there. I went from zero competition to about 112 companies that did what I did. They did some pest control, or they did some wildlife control, or they was performing bee control. So I went from zero to 112 competitors. Wow. Yeah. Drastic change. So I'm a business guy now at this point, being in business. So I went to I like going to non-traditional aspects. A lot of people are going to the internet. A lot of people's going to things that's very common. You hear a lot of repeated things in the industry. So I like going to the non-traditional things. And one of the younger generation can relate to is rappers and hip hop artists. They get a record, they get their name signed, they get a contract, they get a CD out. What do? Most of them have, they're getting record companies, they're getting their own clothing line, they get their own bobbleheads. 50 Cent, I think, has his own bottled water now. And so they get all these things, and I'm thinking, why can't somebody in our industry do that? So I started doing a clothing line, Critter McCool clothing line, trademark. Actually, it's pending for Critter McCool there. But I started thinking non-traditional things. Let's start doing more Facebook things. Let's do things that other companies are not doing.
Right.
And I think that's where you really get your name out there.
Right.
So I moved down there for the nicer weather, the different animals. I've been blessed that I've caught animals from all around the world. I went from catching chipmunks and skunks and raccoons to, I've caught big cats, exotic animals, crocodiles, alligators, hogs, monkeys. I've trapped or hand caught just about any type of creature there is. So I've been blessed with that. So I'm down there, and a lot of competition down there, and the prices really varies in the metro area. I didn't realize that you have so much of a price difference.
Right.
There's some guys that they're charging $600-700 for a raccoon removal, but then this other company down here would catch them for $75.
Right.
So it was really tough for me to find my spot. My reputation and stuff followed me to a little extent, not a great deal. So here I am, new guy on the block, going there. So one of the things that I did, and a lot of people that I talked to thought, wow, you're pretty crazy, is now, it's starting to become a little more common, but networking with other companies. I made a flyer up, and I gave it to every wildlife control company, every pest control company, every beekeeper association. I went to them and say, hey, I'm not your competitor. I am a colleague. So, I'll take any extras you got. I will pay for referrals. I will go and subcontract for you. A lot of companies don't subcontract or won't subcontract.
Right.
And years ago, I used to do a lot of subcontract work for Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
They would subcontract me for their animal work, and people say, you do the animal work. Why would you, for their bird work, why would you do subcontract work for them? Well, because, they might be making a few $1,000s on me doing the work, but I'm still making money that I wouldn't have. They're paying for advertising. They're doing all the paperwork, and et cetera. All I'm doing is performing services and collecting the paycheck.
Right.
So I think that's a big avenue there that a lot of people don't take advantage of is subcontracting other companies. A lot of people say I'm so behind and I'm so stressed because I'm so busy and I don't have the money or don't want to hire somebody. Well, you're losing money. Why? And I understand you don't want to hire somebody, but why can't you subcontract that out to another local company there?
Do you think it's mostly ego, or is it fear, or the lack of knowledge?
I think it's going to be a little bit of lack of knowledge or experience, but majority of it still is going to be ego.
Right.
Ego and hey, he'll find out my prices or he'll steal my client.
Right.
I think that's still a big thing. And I've actually subcontract some people, other companies out on my jobs as well. And I've never lost a client to another company, but I have lost clientele to my former employees.
Right.
You hear a lot of people they'll break off and start their own company. You're more likely to lose a client from that than you are from subcontracting.
Yeah, we get a lot of specialty work from, a lot of guys that, they just do exterior perimeters and they don't want to do, bees, and they don't want to do a lot of things. And we do. We just, they understand that I have a reputation for integrity, that you give me a client, it's your client. I'm not going to market to them. I'm not going to talk to them. I think, the adage of branding in the marketplace has to do a lot. And you mentioned that your parents or your mom sent you to a Christian camp, and and that helped you with your faith. It's one of those things where a good name is better than gold and silver. And when you have a name for having integrity, that you can do business on a handshake and your word is good. Mm-hmm. I think that's more important than all the marketing and branding that you can do. Because without that, if you're known as the guy that, shafts everybody, word's going to get around really quick about you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a firm believer. You treat people the way you want to be treated.
Right.
I'm a very firm believer on that. And I think, I truly believe that everybody has opportunities knocking at the door. One is they don't recognize it, or two, they don't take advantage of it. And it might not be, there's a lot of things that I do that I don't want to do, but I know it's going to get me around that curve or around that corner closer to my goals. So, so I do it, attic clean outs, pulling all the guano out and insulation and odor control, shop back and disinfecting and putting new insulation in. That's big money and that's big revenue, and I don't really care to do it. And I never really have, Frank, but it's one of the services you got to provide to get to your goal.
Right. Yeah, I've had that, in the past, I struggled with that as a business owner. There are a lot of things that I did. I was just going to write, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was just going to write I'm writing a new podcast for, vision and mission and things like that. Cause I think people struggle with, defining their vision and their mission, but it's not going to come from you writing a nice little statement. It's going to come from the experience of what you decided you were going to do and not going to do. And there are a lot of things that I tried that, when my company was totally different, we weren't just a pest control company, of things that customers wanted us to do. And we did. I didn't enjoy doing them, and some of it wasn't even profitable. So when I had the two combination of it's not worth doing and it's not profitable, you don't like doing it, you quickly get out of things that you figure out, and then you kind of figure it out as you're going. Most people have to figure it out as they're going, and they're waiting to get a guru or somebody to tell them, this is how you do it. And a lot of the times it is, trial and error, the glorified term for research and development. and figuring out those things. And I think that's vital to being able to take those chances, and experiment. Yeah. And so like you mentioned, you just did a bad business deal and you lost, but it's par for the course. It's part of, now you know what to do next time. And that's
correct.
And a lot of people just can't deal. The fear keeps them from trying or doing, because I was talking I just did a class that I was teaching a couple of weeks ago, which I'm going to do again, for best management practices. And there was an old man there. He was probably in his 70s. He's now a CPO for a company that's an upstart. And, he's basically just providing the CPO for them. He says, I never grew my company because I was always afraid that I was going to have employees and that I was going to get sued. And I was always afraid that they were going to go and start their own company. And every time he opened up his mouth, I was afraid of doing something. And I think, fear is normal, but I think at one point you do your due diligence, and then you, no matter how well you plan for it, you go out and you made the best decision and you still lost. and I think I just went through that with an employee that I vetted him. He had 9 years experience. I taught him our system and he totally messed it up. And, you still you have to, depending on your goal, you said, that gets you to my goal. And a lot of times it's a lot of failure that gets you to your goal, to be able to achieve it.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I really think you need failure and you need, that struggle, to to be successful. You look at people that got things handed to them, and they have no concept of life, really.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is, and I just recognized this within the last few years, and I really wish that I would have recognized this early in my years, is these clients that everybody's going out in service. They have different life experiences as you, and they have different connections, and they have, that next client might turn your entire life around. You just don't know
right.
the connections that some people have, or who they are, the money they have. So, that's one thing I wish. I have a lot of clients, they'll say, oh, you just start talking to them and, oh yeah, I can help you out with that. Or, hey, I might have old sprayer, sitting in the side of the garage that you can have, or this or that. I went and, the other day, just in this kind of personal end business, I was looking for a car for my daughter. Here I am talking to a client doing a skunk job, looking at a skunk job, and just doing some general talking. Time I left there, I picked up $1,000 job, and I got a car for my daughter.
Yeah.
So, with every, from the Christian standpoint of it, for me, is every person that you cross paths in life has a purpose. And you got to find that purpose. Is it, are they looking at you, or are they protecting you, or is there money to be made? Is there a connection there? There's that saying that your loved ones in your life right now can become strangers, as strangers become your friends overnight.
Right.
And I've actually experienced that a lot. Some of the people in my life that has the greatest impact in my life was only in my life for maybe a week or a month or 2 months. The people that's in my life long term has had a big impact. So I think we overlook that aspect that, them clients or them people that you cross paths for, there's a purpose there.
Right.
And, you have to try to, in such a short period of time, if you want to say extract that purpose and find out, why are you crossing paths for that person? Is there a long-term contract there? Or is there something that they have that you need? Is there knowledge or a connection there? So I think that's a very important aspect of it too.
Yeah, keeping a lot of people, they're sometimes they're going through such a struggle in their life. And one of the things that when you're going through a struggle, the worst thing you can do is focus on that struggle, because it shuts the door off to all the other possibilities. And a lot of people, they just, they hunker down and they're looking at the problem, and the problem isn't going to change. Sometimes it's about going around that problem. So I learned to look for open doors when doors are shutting, and not keep insisting on opening them, but realize that there's another open door somewhere around the corner for me. That this is not happening to me because, everything is conspiring against me, but maybe just to keep my eye off of, or take it away from what I'm actually fascinated over sometimes, that I need to look at. And yes, I got a client who I just did a job for, which is exactly what you're saying, who said, look, I'm retired. I've got money. I'm getting fat here and I'm bored to death. Do you have a job for me? And I said, I'll go work for you. I'll, handle your clients. He's so impressed with the job we did. And I never thought that I would get an employee or somebody wanting to work for me who were my clients. It's, you never think of that. And he started talking to me about what I do and how I do it. And, I've been to his house 3 times. He was so impressed with the system. He's never seen it. And he says, I just need something to go do to keep myself busy, because I don't need the money. I just need to go something to go do. And I said, wow, what a great blessing that was to have that conversation.
Yeah. And I just had a kind of a similar one. I've just been back in the Pennsylvania here for about 2 months. And there was a very young, well-educated, man that started a pest control company. Actually, he was a tech for them for a very short period of time. I'm talking 5 or 6 months. And the company was going out of business. And so he went out on the limb and actually purchased the name and the rights to it. And so he gave me a couple of referrals, and I had lunch with this young man once. That's all, and that was just to give him my flyers and vice versa, because I was going to start some referral work to him, which I don't know if it actually ever started or not. So when I moved back here, I'm still getting calls for Charleston. And this young man calls me up, and he says, "Hey, Critter." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I got something for you." And I'm like, "Okay." He says, "I will take all your B calls and all your calls down here. I will go and inspect them. I will schedule them. I will do everything. And then you can just fly down here, perform services, and leave, and I'll handle every aspect of it free of charge. You just mentor me." Wow. And I said, what a blessing.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty insane for him to, he's got a humble beginning himself. He went from a tech to a pest control owner within probably 6 months or 8 months there. So for him to not even really know me, to give that opportunity to me is mind blowing.
Right. No, I think it has to do with having the right heart and you're having your heart in the right place, because a lot of people that I talk to, it's like, I don't trust anybody. I don't want anybody. And they're always looking at everything everybody's doing wrong. And they shut more doors for themselves than they open. I just got scolded on a Facebook site there was a woman on there who said, I can't afford a bed bug job. I can't afford it. I have no way. You never know what financial situation. We think that everybody is just out having their hand for a freebie, but when you're talking about a $2,000 bed bug job, if you got a 1-bedroom apartment, and it's still going to be $400 to $600 to try to do something like that, and they don't have anything. He says they can't afford it. What would you guys do? And I said, here's the video from Cornell, and here's the way you actually do it. You could probably get, if you follow the instructions, you could get that. And that guy just scolded me like, why did you give away? It took me years to learn this. And at one point, that person is, we understand that 80% of people never buy pest control, that 20% buy it. Some people really can't afford it. I do works in the projects now for people who can't afford it. It's one of those things where he scolded me, like, took me years to get this and learn this, and you're giving it away. I says, they're not even in your state. You don't even understand the social media. And plus, the person is hurting. Why would you not help them with some free advice? And at least let them know if they can do it or not. And it's just that kind of mentality sometimes from people that, you close yourself off to the opportunities, where if you open yourself up and you say, geez, how can I help people? You draw people to you that have something that you can contribute to their life, and they can contribute to yours. And I think it's just that whole, I told him, I says, you're supposed to help people who are in need when you can. And it's not always that you can give away your service. I can't. But I can help people who are in need. And I've gotten 5-star reviews for that I couldn't buy with publicity for doing things like that. And business opportunities have opened from people who says, he helped me, and they know the person they work for, their boss, and says, here, give him a call. So, it's having a really open mindset about, I guess it comes from, you mentioned that you're a believer, and it just comes from my biblical, I look at everything in life from a biblical worldview. I look at it through the lens of Scripture, and what am I supposed to be doing? And sometimes there is, that there is no financial reward, but sometimes the reward is more satisfying. for what we do than if we would have gotten paid for it. Because all my customers can afford it. They have no lack of money. And, so it's things like that I say, man, it opens up new doors for me when others are closing. And I look at things from a different way. I don't have that lack mentality. I think maybe that's why I don't lack anything. Like you said, you don't have 100,000 in the bank, and neither do I. But I can honestly say I don't lack anything, and I never have. I've never been short of a business deal, never been short of a sale, never been short at the end of the month trying to figure out how things are going to get paid. For some reason, they just happen, I guess, at the right moment. And I think it's because of that attitude that says, you're out there to really help people in more ways than you think, because it's not always through the business deal.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of times, it's funny that, from the biblical idea, I'm a very Christian man, but I talk on Facebook, but I try not to talk to a lot of people because that's a
right.
situation. But there was one incident I remember. I went to a job. I didn't get the job, and I was kind of discouraged or upset. And I was like, why didn't I get the job? I got the experience, I got the knowledge. They need services, they got the money. What's going on? Well, driving to my next job, I drove upon a car accident, and I was able, I was a volunteer fireman for 20 years. So, I got out and I helped them and all that. And I said, man, that was the purpose right there. It wasn't to get the job. It was to help these people, So, I look at things like that. Everything happens for a reason. If you don't get that job or you're late for work or you meet a person at the grocery store, everything happens for a purpose, and you need to just, sometimes I don't even know why things happen, but, I look at it. If I don't get a job, I look at it like, man, something, I missed something, or that customer was going to be a nightmare, customer or something like that. So I kind of just brush it off and move on to the next one.
No, I've learned to rejoice in all things, because sometimes it's a hair-pulling experience. You're trying to figure this out, and just rejoice, because there's nothing you're going to figure out about it. It makes no sense. There is nothing. But you've worked on a couple of things that really impressed me. The one is you got a school going on. You got training going on. Talk to me about the training.
Okay. Well, one thing that kind of got me is, my struggle of the paperwork and not knowing how to do certain things and stuff. And so growing up and going to work, I was kind of shut out, I guess, if you want to say. In the industry, both industries is growing. I mean, the pest control is still growing. It's one of the largest industries in the world. Wildlife control it's growing in the last 10, 15 years drastically. So, then I started seeing like WCT magazine was formed, NCOA, which is the National Wildlife Control Association. They was formed, and, they're starting to hold seminars and stuff. And, so I couldn't even afford to go to a seminar or anything.
Right.
So I stayed away. And so when I started attending my first seminar and people found out who I was and what I'd been doing, I was kind of isolated most of my career. So, most people haven't known about me till the last 12 or 15 years. So, anyways, I'm going to these seminars and conferences and meetings, and I'm starting to see, man, these people are going through the same struggles that I am,
Right.
And, very simple things. And not to take this the wrong way, but, common sense is not so common anymore, and just because I grew up in Pennsylvania and you grew up in Miami, our structures are completely different. Our pests are completely different, so that textbook by somebody from, pest management or somewhere, PCT, is a general guide, but, you can only pick so much from each person. So what I had a vision for, I'm like, wow, we need to, there's WCT, they do training things. Again, the COA, pest management, they all do seminars. But my feeling is when you go to a seminar, you can only take away so much from that seminar because each area is different. The clientele is different, the structures, the pests, everything. So I wanted to start a training facility where people can actually come to me and we can train on certain aspects of things. But one of the services that I provide that nobody else that I'm aware of does is you can come to me and do ride-alongs, or I will come to you. I'll come to your job site. For a small company, if you say 1 to 3 guys, that company cannot financially afford much of the time to send 2 or 3 of their techs to a seminar, pay for travel, for wages, for the hotel, for this conference. Right. You're gonna have several $1,000s, and you're only going to be able to take so much away from that conference. I'm not saying conferences are good because they're excellent.
Right.
But if you can have a person with my knowledge and my experience come to your facility and consult or train you and your guys on your job sites while you're making money,
right,
on your structures and your pests, you're going to take 80% of that knowledge away instead of 15 or 20.
Right. Yeah, the hands-on with in most of the conferences that we go to are lectures, and you're only gonna the best mind is only gonna retain about 10%, even if you add visuals. But when you have that hands-on and you're doing, I had that same conversation with I'm down here. I'm on the advisory committee for one of the departments in the extension service, and we have these meetings all the time. And the biggest challenge that they have is you have the best programs, but the problem is nobody can attend. Cities cannot afford to leave their people for an entire day, much less a week or a hotel and all that. They're struggling with cities and training and all that with pest management. And I said, we need to go out to where they are and spend a day with them, training their people. And believe it or not, that got scoffed at because I said, this is where we're at. If you're going to provide a service, then you have to provide the service where the service is needed. You can't demand everybody come to you. And I think that is just, brilliant. I think places like, online communities have taken off because of that. People need a lot of help. It is really needed in this industry. It's not, not everybody has it figured out, and I know that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, training is very important. It's needed. A lot of people can't afford it. They can't travel, to Vegas for a seminar or Louisiana or something like that. But I think they're more apt and more affordable to pay a guy like myself or somebody to come to their office, and they can see how they're set up and how they're running operations. And the nice thing about me is I have experience of running a big time company or a small time company.
Right.
So, training. So I'm opening a facility. I just purchased a building. I'm actually going to have classroom settings. I'm going to have hands-on training from bee extraction to wildlife control stuff. And then I'm also going to be bringing in instructors from all around the United States that they can come in. So you have Terminex. They have a training facility for their employees.
Right.
Working, they do WCT. You can come in, train. NACOA, they hold training centers, but they have their own instructors.
Right.
Here, we're going to be pretty much open. So if you want to have a beekeeping meeting here, or if you want to have a pest management association here, or if you want to instruct a class yourself, you can come and hold that class at our facilities.
No, that is very, very needed. Good training is always very needed. There's a lot of new people coming in. There's a lot of people that have been in it for a while that have never gotten any training. I think,
correct.
and I think it's vital, and especially I see a lot of mistakes being done with bees down here. I had an advantage because I got a lot of info from a beekeeper down here who actually runs him and his wife make, all the hives, and they manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
And he was been able to, very instrumental in helping me learn how to, extract and do the bee work. But if I went to a conference, I would walk away with a lot of head knowledge, but not the actual. And I go to his shop all the time. He gives me the hives. He teaches me. So I think, it's so needed. It is very needed. Most people underestimate how needed it is. People think they've been doing it right for a long time, and they've actually been doing it wrong.
And that's a extremely good point right there, Frank, is, I get a lot of people, that they decide to hire me, or I oversee some of their work, and, I go on their job sites or something. They say, "Hey, I got 20 years experience," or "I've been doing pest control for 30 years. And you go there and you find out they're, honestly, they're doing it completely wrong.
Right.
Now, my way is not always the correct way. I mean, there's a lot of great experience and knowledge out there, but there is most definitely a wrong way,
Right.
There's many ways to do things correctly, but there's not too many ways to do it wrongly,
Right. Right. No, I think it's a marvelous thing. And then also, man, I mean, it can go on, we can go on for hours, but you've got, talk to us about the museum. All right. And you've got a lot of neat stuff going on with that. And talk to us about the museum.
Yeah, it's actually, getting a lot more attention and raising eyebrows than I'm really aware of. Many years ago, of course, starting in the industry, you're in attics and crawl spaces and stuff. And so I would find an old can of rat poison or DDT or something that had cool graphics. And I'm like, I'm not really in the pest control industry, at least at that time.
Right.
But graphics is kind of cool. So I'd take it home and sit it on my shelf, or an old sprayer, and customer would be like, "I'll just throw it away." So, I would just throw it on my office desk or on my bookshelf. So over the years, I would collect weird things, like if it was a badge off of a job site that said that I worked at the White House or something. I had never have. That's just an example, but I collect the old badge, or, I worked at a glass factory at one time doing skunk work. So I had took a big chunk of melted glass. I thought that was cool. Or the old square nails from, I do a lot of historical places. And, so I'd take the square nails. I'd take kind of a souvenir from each job site, if you want to say, if it had some significance of something. So, make a long story short, stuff just piling up and stuff. And, people kind of was like, I'd take a selfie or something of a picture of me and, with my stuff in my office, and they'd say, "Hey, that's a cool picture, but what's that really cool thing on the shelf?" So I'm like, man, so come to find out, when people, are cleaning out the garages or houses or estates and your parents pass away or anything, people don't want those old chemicals. Sometimes you actually have to pay to get rid of them. So they just discard them. And so, I'm a big person I'm dedicated to our industry. So, what really sparked it is I got a book from the 1800s, and they're talking about removing bats out of a structure in the 1800s.
Wow.
And so when I did that, I looked back, and one of the first bee extractions ever performed was in 1853. And it's documented in the book. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool history. And I'm like, how many people knows of this? So, Orkin actually has a little museum, but it's of their own stuff. It's their original truck and so forth. So I was looking, and, I have everything that I started my company with: my original flyers, my original box trap, my first pair of gloves that I bought at a yard sale. And this is how much of a struggle I had. The only thing I do not have, I have kept every magazine I've been in, every newspaper article. I've kept everything in my entire career except the first dollar that I've ever made. because I was so poor that I had to spend it.
Wow.
But get back onto that, I have all this stuff. And so, about 5 years ago, I decided we need to know the history and preserve the history of our industry. You know, it's one of the few that there's no museum for. You know, everybody knows about the Black Plague and the Rat Plague and different things from back then, but nobody really knows the history of DDT or anything like that. So I said, I think I'm going to start displaying this more. So I started displaying it a little bit more, bookshelves here and there, and people thought it was very intriguing. So I sat down and started kind of categorizing this I don't know if you want to call it a mess or whatever. People joke that I'm a rustaholic because I don't care if it's broken, dented, rusted. Some things are just so hard to find that you have to keep something of it. So now at this point I have well over 4,000 pieces of vintage pest control items.
Wow.
Ranging from the original Black Flag, Raid, Johnson & Johnson. I got rat poison and mouse traps and sprayers, bug lights. I have everything, ranging about 150 years of history. And I don't collect anything it has to, one thing I wanted to do, Frank, that I didn't want to get overwhelmed with collecting stuff. So I started collecting stuff that was dated from anything prior from the start of my company. So it has to be at least 25 years old or older.
Uh-huh.
So now in 25 years, I'm going to be trying to scrounge up the things that I'm using right now, probably, you know,
right.
Unfortunately. But, yeah, I have well over 4,000 pieces of vintage pest control stuff, from bed bug stuff to fly swatter, sticky tape, bug lights, sonar, sprayers, you name it. And it is just, it's fabulous. I mean, I walk in there and it inspires me. I mean, I'm like, wow, you know, the industry has come such a long ways.
Right.
And to see that and envision that and to be a part of that, pest control is one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most important industries in the world.
Right.
You know, controlling of insects and wildlife is, you know, if we don't control it, it needs controlled and managed. It don't need wiped out, you know, and that's why I'm more of a pest control / pesticide free guy. I think there's a greener way and a better way to manage and to control everything, you know, on that aspect. I think that's our history, and that's a great thing, but I think we need to move forward, and the industry needs to keep changing more for the better.
Right. No, I definitely, I get, you know, we're not an organic company. I hate to put labels and, you know, and be in that, you know, we are a very, very, strategic IPM, company that just happens to have to market to a person who's looking for that. And, I think there is a better way. There always is. It's just a matter of you caring enough to find it and being driven enough. And I think that.
Well, and I think that's the key word is not, you know, you can make a lot of excuses up, but caring is probably the ideal word because, you know, a lot of people says, well, you can't control stinging insects pesticide free, hornets or yellow jackets. I've literally performed some of the largest removals in the world. I've actually have unconfirmed world records on it. And they was all performed without pesticide or insecticide.
Right.
So, it can be done.
Yeah.
We just need to find our niche and find a way to do it correctly. And when you do it that way, it actually lowers your liability, you know?
Right.
You know, yeah. So, So the Pest Control Museum, it's going to be one of the first of its kind that I'm aware of, possibly in the world. I have well over 4,000 pieces. Most of it's in great condition or good condition. There's some near mint condition, and there's some some pieces that's pretty rough, but I just put a flyer, just officially made a flyer here a couple weeks ago announcing that I'm collecting things. I've never really went out and asked people for donating items or anything, but I'm now accepting donations and different things for it. So right now it's going to be displayed with the training center, and then we're going to put in another additional one and actually have a museum just for that. I have anything from the common pest control stuff like the sprayers and the rat poison and bug lights, fly swatters, clear to I got alligator heads. I got souvenirs from my job sites over the years. I have old signs. And so a lot of my company stuff is mixed in with it, but it's quite the large display.
No, that's just very, very, very amazing and inspirational, especially for a geek like me to be able to go somewhere like that and say, man, that's cool. That stuff you've never seen that you didn't think, like, how did they use that?
Yeah. I'm like a kid in the candy store every day. I mean, I'm so into my job that, you think, guys want, most guys like four-wheelers and hunting and they like having their toys and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm just happy with an old can of bee spray or old mousetrap. I'm just as happy with that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. I'm just, I've been in this business now very short time, less than 10 years now. So my experience is very, thank you. It's very, very limited. So I'm always in awe when I speak to people that have been doing this a very long time and have accomplished what you have accomplished. A lot of people have been in it a long time, but there's, what you've been able to accomplish is always inspirational for me. I'm a history buff. I love to tinker with stuff. It's just, to me, that kind of stuff is just, I hope that people can interpret the smile on my face when I do these podcasts because,
I see it.
It's really encouraging. It is. And to see that, what you're doing, that you are a true inspiration to what's right in this industry. We get a lot of criticism from the world, but you're part of exactly what's right with the industry and what more people should be aspiring to do. And I was former youth worker and youth minister, and I still looking for ways to impact youth and bring young people into this industry because I think I can influence and help a lot of kids that were probably in your situation when you were that age. And I think, to find out things that we can do to really, really, really make a difference in our industry. And I think you've done that.
Yeah. All you have to have is, you don't even need a dream. You need a vision and a goal, and, you can overcome any situation, and, like I said earlier, the struggle is going to always be there. If, it's going to come and go, but throughout life, if you make $5,000 a year, Frank, or if you're doing $10 million in sales, if you're working in Terminex doing $1 billion in sales, the struggles are still there.
Right.
Yeah. People don't realize. So I think struggles and taking advantage of opportunities that's given to you, I think that's the key thing. And determining what success is to each person. Each person's success is completely different. Right. If I got $2,000 in the bank and I'm happy and my kids are healthy and I have a truck that gets me to point A to point B, that's successful to me.
Right. No, I agree. I can't, I've learned to be content in whatever my situation is and enjoy what I have. And, that's, been the key and help as many people along the way, to accomplish, their dreams and their goals. And I think you've inspired a lot of people today. I hope that, they are inspired and they see that whatever they're wanting or if they work towards it, if they work hard, if they write their goals down and if they have a vision to get it done. You're probably the biggest example I know of this in this industry. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
For being here and doing this. And I really do appreciate it. And, you're now in, you're back in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'm based in Pennsylvania. I mean, I travel all over the United States and consult for other countries and stuff. So, can't really put a location, but yes, the base location is back in Pennsylvania in my hometown area.
Okay.
Between Erie and Pittsburgh. The first training center is going to be there in the museum. Okay. And my goal, not my dream, but my goal is to open a training facility up in Charleston, South Carolina as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
At some point in time.
And if somebody needs your assistance, they want to go to the museum, they want to take the classes, they want to hire you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
As most people know, I'm a big Facebook person. I have a couple pages, Critter McCool, and I have also a Critter McCool training group on Facebook. You can like the page and get updates.
Okay.
Email would be mccoolswildlife@yahoo.com. Or my cell phone is 814-758-4927. Email, a lot of people email me at mccoolswildlife@yahoo.com though.
Okay. Beautiful. Do you guys have a web page for any of the stuff going on, with the university the college or the museum?
Actually just the Critter McCool training group on Facebook is the only thing that we got going on right at this moment. Once we get everything set up, we're going to start holding classes here, in the spring of 2017. I'm actually assistant instructor for wildlife control technology as well. We just had an exclusion workshop out there. We're providing ride-alongs and also coming to your facility as well. Right now, we do all of them services, right now. So,
awesome.
Yep. So we'll get all that stuff set up more in the spring here. But yeah, a lot of interesting and intriguing things are happening for us here. More in the spring, we're actually gutting out and remodeling the building and everything right now, trying to kind of get it kind of state of the art this facility.
Well, just think about it. You're still a very young guy, and how old are you now? I'm
actually in my mid-40s.
Okay, so we're right there. Yeah. So we're just getting started.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of where I look at it is I got almost 30 years of experience and knowledge already. I'm in my mid-40s.
Yeah.
And they say men don't mature and actually get their head on right until the age of 40.
Yep.
So they said 40s is the new prime. So, hopefully I have another 30 years in this industry and I can make a big impact. I'm not here to make millions of dollars. I'm just here to leave a living legacy for my children.
Thank you. Really do appreciate that. I wish you all more success and we'll keep in touch. And if you're ever down in Florida, if I ever my wife has been begging me for a road trip. So we might, we might head up there and say, let's go look at a pest control museum, honey. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, man. Maybe we get to meet, and if you're ever down here in my neck of the woods in Miami, hit me up and we'll grab some lunch or something. I appreciate that.
Well, I definitely make it to Florida, and if you need a road trip, Niagara Falls is only about 3.5 hours from me. So
so you're way up north, Cool.
Yeah, so you can always tell her you're going to Niagara Falls. You just got to make a pit stop at the museum.
Yeah. Hey, man. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And, we'll talk to you soon. And, just have a great one, man. I appreciate it so much.
All right. Thank you.
You've been a pleasure.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Be safe. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.